Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming. It's great to see so many of you. My name's Mickey Green. I'm a member of Boating. I've been a member for about 10 years now, and I'm also on the board. And I and Carol Kuhn, sitting right here in the middle, are the organizers of these Winter Adventure Series. And tonight is our last one. And for this year, and I think we've had a pretty good run. We had a variety of presentations, and as I said, this is the last one, and so we would really like to say a big thank you to Brenda for she does a lot of the organizing. She does a lot of the PR and also provides this wonderful location. So thank you, Brenda. And this is also our first co-sponsored event with the Belfast Bay Watershed Coalition, another organization close to my heart. And for those of you who don't know, BBWC supports conservation and stewardship of natural and public resources of the Belfast Bay watershed through research, community building, and education. Every year, we bring hundreds of folks together to volunteer, teach, research, and learn. The programs are free, and the objective is clear: to protect our gorgeous watershed. Since this is the fourth program this year, most of you have already heard the Boating introduction and have learned of how we're a nonprofit here in Belfast. Our mission is to create education-related programs that preserve and broaden the maritime heritage shared by the Belfast area community and to strengthen our connection to the sea. We are a totally volunteer-run organization which relies mainly on donations to help fund the maintenance of our 3 Cornish pilot gigs, the docks that they're kept at, and the various insurance coverage, etc. Any of you can come and row. You don't have to have any experience. It's absolutely free. But if you get the rowing bug, which you most probably will, we do encourage you to become a member. Membership is a meager $35 for an individual and $60 for a family. The boats, I should let you know that we have about 150 members. So at $35 a pop, that's not very much income. So obviously we then rely significantly on donations. And if you feel free or so inclined this evening, there's a cookie jar in the back of the room there if you want to leave a little something, or go online to comboating.org. We appreciate every penny we can get. We would like to say a big thank you to Belmont Boat Works for providing the space for us to completely overhaul the gig named Belfast this winter. They were so generous with their time and giving us the space, and also to Front Street Shipyard for providing the dock space for Selkie, the one boat we had in the water all winter. Both companies have been so generous, and we can't thank them enough. Plus, it was a sprint to get at least 2 boats ready to compete in the Snow Row Regatta down in Hull, Massachusetts this last weekend. And guess what? Boating won the entire event. Our ladies team, some of which are in the corner there, one in Selkie, and the team rowing Belfast came in 3rd, just a few seconds behind the second boat from Bodenham. So we're extremely proud. We also rely on a couple of fundraising events each year, and the first of which is coming up soon, our launch day and nautical yard sale, which will be the Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. Here you can sign up for a row, go for a trial row, enjoy hot dogs from the barbecue and homemade baked goods made by our members, and scoop up all sorts of nautical items donated by the community. So if you have a boat to donate, boat bits or bits of boats, Cambodia would really appreciate that. So if you've got anything to write for the event, please, we will have details, not working, on the notice board outside the shed, the Cambodian shed. Hello, hello, hello. Hello. And we'll put details up on social media and also on our website, cambodian.org. And even if you don't have nautical items to contribute, please do come and enjoy the fun. And hopefully, come, maybe there'll be some item of interest. We'll also have Cambodian merchandise. It's the first annual April 26th. Any human-powered road or paddle craft are invited to race the 3.75-mile course. Cormorants are involved. The race starts at 10:30 by the footbridge. There's no registration fee, but we ask that you may make a donation to Cambodian or another charity of your choice. So it should be a lot of fun. So that's my bit. With much further ado, Carol, will introduce our presenter. I'm going
to. No. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mickey, and thank you. All right, sorry. I just thought I won't tell you anything about Andrew in his farm, scallop farming. I'll let him tell his own story. But I want to tell you what I know about Andrew. And so Andrew is really part of a trio. In 2017, he bought a lobster boat from, I don't know he bought it, but it was one of Holland's boats, a lobster boat made in East Belfast. And he called it that boat Sammy G. And his wife is Samantha Gilligan, and more affectionately known as Sam. And Sam's a nurse practitioner at Seaport Family Health Center. And anyone who has met Sam loves Sam. And then about 3 years ago, he needed a bigger boat. And he bought a boat and he named it Bowden Blue after his son named Bowden. And so Sam and Bowden, can you stand up for us? And Bowden, today is March 18th. I think you are 3 3/4 years old. So what are you going to be in June? 4. Yes, it only gets better. It only gets better, Bowden. But Andrew rounds out at this trio, and I know a few things about Andrew. I remember Andrew when he was a plumber, not a fisherman. So not many people know that. And his friends at Seaport Family Practice tried to give him a logo for his business. Peter's pretty good plumbing. It didn't stick. And so there's just one more to the trio, and that is Andrew. And there's one more thing about Andrew that I think might surprise you. Andrew has a beautiful voice. Yes, he used this thing for the Downey Singers, and I'd go to the concerts, and he'd stand out. He'd be right in the middle. This beautiful voice, and this handsome man. But the thing was, Andrew started out. He was 30 years younger than everybody else in the chorus. So here. Let's welcome Andrew, and maybe he'll even sing for us.
Thank you, Carol. Can you hear me all right?
I think so.
Is it working still?
Yep. Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here, and it's fun to see so many familiar faces. And it's for those of you who don't know, I'm Andrew Peters, and founder and CEO of Vertical Bay, which I will be talking about this evening. Yeah, very excited to share with you all what I've been up to for the last 6, 7 years. Many of you kind of see me come and go or see our yard full of buoys, and got our neighbors here that have patiently watched our driveway fill up with gear and deal with stinky scallop gear. And yeah, so it's fun to have be speaking to a home crowd and yeah, some familiar faces and new faces as well. So tons to talk about. So I'm, in the interest of not having you here till midnight, I'm gonna try to be somewhat organized in my thoughts and yeah, and work you through kind of what we've been up to, and starting with just a little bit of context of scallops and why anyone is pursuing this at all, and then give you a little overview of Vertical Bay, and then jump back into more context of kind of the history of Maine scallops, Japan, Canada, and then kind of some storytelling through just some photos of the last 6 years or so with Vertical Bay. And then kind of the last 2 points are just, how it fits in with the rest of Maine aquaculture, and then kind of as we look ahead, yeah, what it looks like, and kind of revisiting the why we're doing this. The U.S. scallop market is a good place to start. It's, for all intents and purposes, an amazing opportunity for Maine scallops. Half of U.S. scallops that are consumed in the United States are imported. The other half are produced here in the United States by primarily dragger boats in the offshore federal fishery. And so that's there's also kind of a downward trend of scallop landings kind of in this federal and state fisheries, the U.S. fishery, for the scallops that are being landed, and then therefore more scallops are being imported. Maine scallops make up just a teeny tiny little fraction of the total landings for the U.S., so at just 1%. So it's teeny. And yeah, the coastal fishery of New Hampshire and I believe Massachusetts, on any given year, it's 2.5% to 3% for the 3 states combined. And despite all of that, or the size, I should say, the Maine's wild fishery continually boasts the highest value. Even though it's the 1%, it's Maine scallops are in high demand. There's been wonderful branding, diver scallops, we've all heard that name, dayboat scallops, and all of that's already under kind of a solid Maine seafood label. So the question is, given this kind of hungry appetite for scallops within the U.S. market, how does Maine take advantage of the incredible scallop resource without taxing wild stocks? That's where scallop farming comes in. Both farming scallops from kind of start to finish to market, but then there's also opportunities that haven't really quite taken hold yet, such as active and passive stock enhancement techniques, kind of using kind of partially farmed scallops and then seeded out onto wild beds to help the wild fisheries maybe be able to harvest more, help with management practices. So enter Vertical Bay. We are a sea scallop farm. We're based out of here in Belfast, and our farm is located 16 miles down eastern Penobscot Bay. It's kind of west of Little Deer Isle, south of Cape Rozier. Should have made a map slide. It's technically in the town of Deer Isle, but it's kind of, when I was doing my leasing, the town of Deer Isle didn't even know that it was part of town of Deer Isle until I told them it was part of Deer Isle. So that was a fun exploration. So just a pretty quick kind of overview of what we do, just to so you're not totally clueless as I work through a bit of the history of everything. We collect wild scallop spat that's floating just floating around the water in Penobscot Bay. It's kind of all over scallop larvae. We collect them using spat bags. These are spat bags. I'll talk about that a little bit. The scallops settle out in the spat bags and onto the ocean floor in basically the fall. So they spawn the end of the summer, early September. They have a 30 to 45 day larval period, which is the longest of any of the cultivated shellfish species in Maine. Super long. So hatcheries have a really hard time kind of growing baby scallops or settling them out, producing them. So yeah, so the wild spat collection is the preferred technique for getting baby scallops. And so they settle out into the bags, they start to grow a shell through the winter, and then in the kind of spring or early summer of the following year, the scallops, the shells are too big and they can't escape the bag. And that's when we start to handle them. We take the, empty the bags and we introduce them onto our lease site, our farm, in the inside of nets. And so we use pearl nets and lantern nets, varying mesh sizes. And then we grow the scallops in those nets, kind of changing the stocking densities a couple times over the course of a year. And then the following kind of spring, early summer again, we move to our ear hanging method, which is a grow out method to get the scallops from about 55 to 70 millimeters to a harvestable size of somewhere plus or minus 100 millimeters. And that's kind of would produce like a 20 count scallop, kind of a grocery store scallop meat. And so we also can harvest, as a farm, we can harvest the whole animal as well. So once they're ready to harvest, we then sell direct to consumers nationwide and locally. We have a website, we can ship nationwide, and then we also supply restaurants and wholesalers in the Northeast locally, and then also we ship across the country. So this next slide just kind of is a kind of more detailed visual of our process. So it's a 3-year process from start to finish. The scallops are on our farm really for only 2 years, but the spat collection, you can see it starts in September, October. We deploy the spat collectors, and then the following June, the scallops go into pearl nets. They're about 5 to 10 millimeters in shell height. So we use these strings of pearl nets, and so they've got a little opening here. You just stock them right in the nets. This is a string of 4. We use strings of 15, and then space the strings along our long line about 1 foot to 1.5 foot apart. So it's quite a lot of net, and then we're also using kind of the vertical water column as well, hence the name. I like a good pun. Even Bowden knows. So once we're in pearl nets, those teeny tiny small scallops, we let them grow for about a month or 2. Then as they grow, they get kind of spatially constricted. So then we have to thin out the scallops to give them space to grow and space to be happy. If they're too dense, they'll kind of get crowded. They'll start to, they call them knife each other. They kind of clap onto each other and not intentionally, but they kill each other. So that's a good way to lose scallops or have deformities or slow growth. So we do, first thinning in July and August, and then we do a second thinning down to about 15 scallops per net, 15 to 20 per net in the pearl nets anyway, in October, November. Then in those nets, the scallops will stay until the following April, March. We just started ear hanging last week, actually. It's the earliest we've ever done by 2 months. So the bigger they are, the sooner the bigger they are, the faster we can ear hang them. And once they're on the dropper lines, which are these things, these are basically a rope with a little barbed pin that goes through the line. And the scallops, they get a hole drilled in the hinge, the bissel notch, and then each scallop gets put on. Up until this year, it's been a manual process to put every scallop on each pin. So this year, and I'll show you photos, we just moved to a different drill that drills the scallops, pins the scallops, and pins the rope all in one go, which is pretty exciting. Once they're on dropper lines, as I said before, another year, then we harvest. So just kind of repeated myself, but with two different visuals. So trying to set the stage. So here we go. So we'll take a step back and kind of answer the question of how we got here. Why am I standing in front of you talking about farming scallops? It started somewhere in the 70s. In 1970, there was kind of the first record of scallops in Maine being handled in kind of a farming aspect. And so this first stage, back up and say there's three different kind of periods. The first period is our knowledge gathering in the late 1970 to 2010 roughly, and then you have kind of the start of industry, and that's a lot of tech transfer, gears starting to come in to Maine. There's more collaborations with science, UMaine, and growers, and then finally, kind of the period we're in right now is like we're actually doing it, which is exciting. The collaboration's still going on, but there's commercial operations happening, and right now there's 2, maybe 3 commercially sized operations in Maine, and as far as we know, the East Coast, it's Vertical Bay and another grower, Marsden Brewer, over out of Stonington. And coincidentally, our farms are really only like 4 miles apart. Yeah, so I'm going to cruise ahead here to the timeline. So in that first period, that information gathering, in earnest, the kind of modern cohort of researchers and enthusiasts, it all started in 1999 when a group of Maine delegates visited Amori Prefecture, and it was kind of it was like an economic development trip, and there were a couple marine biologists, one being, I believe Dana Morse was on that trip, and they were going to research for spat collection primarily with the intention of doing stock enhancements for the wild fishery. It wasn't about farming, it was just about how do we get spat. A lot of other countries in the world are collecting that spat. They grow it, to just within the spat bag, 5 to 10 millimeters, and then they cast it onto the wild beds, and that just helps enhance the wild stocks. And yeah, so that was kind of where it all began. And then I'm not going to list everything, but there's multiple trips, delegations from Japan to Maine and vice versa. And the 2 guys that really kind of helped to drive this in the early 2000s, as I mentioned, Dana Morse of Maine Sea Grant. Sea Grant's been in the news lately, and kind of no question that they have an incredible impact on Maine's fisheries. And then Hugh Cowperthwaite of Coastal Enterprises, Inc. He is their fisheries and aquaculture coordinator, and they're basically just an industry support group. They do a lot of education, and then they also kind of act as a bank as well, doing kind of financial support, but then also fundraising for grants and continued kind of research and then tech transfer opportunities. What's not on this list is a fun fact that in 2021, the first bioeconomic analysis paper was published using data from Vertical Bay and other growers up and down the coast. And it was written by Struan Coleman, who at the time was part of the Damian Brady lab at UMaine. And through his work, we got to know Struan, and he's now a partner, formal business partner of Vertical Bay, and has helped prepare slides because this is not a strong suit. As they can attest to my trying to figure out how to get this up here. So yeah, a lot's gone into this, and this is kind of a pretty cursory discussion. This is like a whole seminar, is just the relationship with Japan. And this is, just some photos, some snapshots of a lot of the trips, the people who have been involved. And I'm leaving out kind of the why Japan. Japan, 2 reasons. They have about a 60-year head start in scallop farming. And it started back in the mid-1900s, I think it was like 1950s. They had a scallop fisheries collapse, just a total collapse of their wild fishery, overfishing, and I'm sure the blame is hotly debated, but until now. But anyway, the Japanese government, kind of in full force to save their coastal communities, just put so much effort into figuring out how to scallop farm. And so here they are today. They've got, it's many, many millions, if not billions of dollars of scallops being sold every year. You can get them at Hannaford for $28 a pound. They're really good. You should try them. And then another key piece is that Maine, about 30 years ago, established a sister state relationship, an official relationship with Aomori Prefecture, which encompasses Mutsu Bay in kind of the northern part of Honshu, which is the main island of Japan. And that's a huge hub of scallop farming, particularly scallop farms that use ear hanging technique. And just this top left photo, which you surely can't see, it's Dana Morse, Hugh Copperthwaite, and I were fortunate to meet with essentially the equivalent of a governor. He's the head of the prefecture of Aomori when Sam Bowden and I and Hugh and Dana went in January of 2023. So yeah, it's just pretty neat to be part of kind of what is an actual official relationship and kind of official representation. Funny to think that, yeah, never thought that growing scallops would lead us to that conversation in Japan. So all of this that I'm talking about, the history, all the research, all the outreach, all the tech transfer, it would not be possible without all of these organizations. Yeah, it's I can name people probably at every one, but it's all funding, seminars, just teaching people about aquaculture in general. But a lot of direct funding to us to go on these trips for gear. We have our boat alone through CEI. So just, yeah, it's this is a thank you. I'm not done. This is the middle of the presentation. But I'm, yeah, want to make sure I get it out there. These guys, thank you. So enter Vertical Bay. Yeah, as Carol mentioned, we founded the company in 2017. My wife Sam and I, pre-Bowden, we were both working full-time jobs, and I had kind of the long desire to own my own company and work on the water. And that was kind of originally in the form of lobstering. I had done some lobstering down in Casco Bay out of Portland and Falmouth for a bit. Got my lobster apprenticeship and was on the wait list. And we moved up here for Sam's job at Seaport. And I was kind of like, what do I do? After working at Chase's for a bit and doing a lot of plumbing projects for Addison, I was also like, oh, I want to get back to the water. And so after some research and trying to figure out, okay, aquaculture, what species, like oysters isn't great. Belfast Bay is technically closed, so it's not going to be close to Belfast. So there's a lot of details. And I learned about scallops. And so this was, yeah, back in 2017, maybe even earlier that I learned about scallops. It was, I was like, oh, no one's doing it. And if you can grow them, you can definitely sell them back to the market piece. Everyone loves scallops. I just fed one to a vegan this past weekend, and they loved it. No joke. And you like raw scallops, yeah. Yeah, so we chose scallops, and that's with the help of Maine Sea Grant. We did a little farm visit with Dana Morse. He took us out on his farm down at the Darling Marine Center. I'm saying we, I actually had a good friend of mine who helped me. He was a grad student at the time at UMaine, and he helped me kind of do a lot of the paperwork, and also wrote a grant for grant proposal to MTI, which we got, and got $14,000 to help purchase our first long line and our first kind of batch of nets. And just so happened to be 2018, when we put our gear in the water, we went to go buy seed, and it was a horrible spat collection year. And Marsden Brewer had one spat bag. He said, "Good luck." And it had about 300 scallops in it. And that was our first year of scallop farming. And yeah, the bucket on the bottom right there is all of our scallops in 2018. So humble beginnings. And I'll back up a step too. When we first went out to our long line, Sam and I went out on a beautiful sunny day, and I tried to pull up the long line from our 17-foot Carolina skiff, which was our original boat, original boat. And we couldn't even pull up the long line. It had been set by a lobsterman friend, Nate Venno over in Brooksville. And we went and talked to someone. They laughed. They said, "Yeah, you're going to need some hydraulics." So we put our savings at that point into Sammy G. So it was kind of a go or no go decision, and we went for it. So yeah, so this is kind of what it looked like at the start. We would measure all of our scallops practically every time we handled them, and it was an adventure, to say the least. We had 400-foot long line and 1 lantern net in 2018. So spatial efficiency. So period from kind of 2019 to 2021, just a real period of like learning what we were doing. Can scallops even grow? How to handle nets. You know, that first kind of 9 months or so, I guess almost, yeah, 9 months or so was just 1 lantern net. It was a little bit of a hobby. We did spat collection the fall of 2018 and actually got a great collection. And so we had a bunch of scallops starting in 2019. And we were quickly overwhelmed. Sam and I working just on the weekends. We'd bring out friends to help try to manage everything. And we definitely got behind with fouled nets. And yeah, it's quite a project. Lots of learning. But then in 2020, May of 2020, Chris and Amanda Battaglia were our first crew of ear hangers. Amanda's parents are right there. And spoiler alert, Matthew, her brother, is my full-time crew person who's sitting next to them. So yeah, they were our first crew. Chris is behind the lens, and as always, and Amanda and Sam are there. We're going through some spat bags there. And then they also were there on the day that we first did our ear hanging. So that was our original drill, which was a gift from a fisherman in Japan to Dana at Sea Grant, Dana Morse, and then Dana lent it to us to give it a go. And that was our first dropper line in the water. And yeah, so this is also probably tough to see, but it's you can see the little teeny tiny dots on the green bag, and that's those are baby scallops. Those are the spat collection. Too small to handle at that point, but that's just when we go to check the bags, we just see if anything's in there. Just more for fun than anything. So continuing on, in that period, we also did a lot of work. Like we'll keep mentioning UMaine, DMR, Sea Grant, and CEI. A lot of work with all these organizations, having folks out to the farm, doing growth analysis studies with different types of gear, different stocking densities, different depths. So there you have on the left, Dana Morse working with a tray system that we were trialing. I'm on the top right with the tray system, kind of pulling it out. They grew really well. They were really pretty cumbersome to handle and very costly. Top center, those are UMaine grad students not doing science. They were actually helping me shuck in 2021 to harvest. And then, yeah, lots of friends and family pitched in to kind of help out. And we've got just good friends on the bottom right, and then my Struan's on the right in the center photo, and then Matt Zucra is my first employee. His mom, Deb, is over at the hospital, and many of you might know Daryl, but yeah, he has been with me, or was with me for a couple summer seasons, and then now has been back helping this winter, which has been awesome to have him around. So lots of support is the moral of the story. So in 2021, in June of 2021, two things happened. As Carol mentioned, Bowden was born, and he was quite early, and I had a really great plan of how I was going to go into harvesting and manage all of that. But the day after my first delivery, he was delivered, and so I had to cancel my next delivery, which was not a great way to start. But he was consuming, and we started selling, and kind of between scallops and their needs and family needs, I made the switch to go full time, and that was and just kind of made it work. We cleaning scallops and all the harvesting and all the harvest prep. We were originally selling whole scallops, each scallop scrubbed with a wire brush, which was silly looking back, but that was what we did. And our first customers were the Lost Kitchen and the Hitchborn. They were the two that first started buying. And I also did some local pickups. So me and the truck. So moving into the next period of, we're harvesting. We kind of feel like we know what we're doing, in moments anyway. We kind of decided we got to upgrade from Sammy G. Deck space was really tight, and so we got a bigger boat, and allowed us to make some modifications to help our process and our backs. You can see in the photo on the top right, we've got a nice mast, and I'll give a shout out to David Black. I saw him earlier. He is a local fisherman out of Belfast, and he gave me the mast, which we're very thankful for. And Wayne Canning, top center, he is good friend and mentor as well, and he helped me install it along with other friend Tim Poulin. Then kind of through that winter, armed with our new boat, we were trying to grow we got our experimental lease approved, and so we put in 2 more long lines, so to try to grow our ability to have more space on our lease. And that photo is just 2 Harbor Marine, their barge, and they helped set out the long lines super smooth, and it was really exciting to get that going. So, and you can see the mast and boom lifting up a very heavy lantern net. Thank you, David. So, yes. So, kind of with all the growth and all that, there's also, it was very exciting to learn and improve. In 2022, we introduced pearl nets to our farm. So that's a truckload of pearl nets with Matthew and Bowden. We get shipping containers from Japan. That's you, yeah. And this one we just had unloaded, and Bowden was also sent home from school sick that day. And it coincided exactly with when the container arrived. So lots of moments like that. And then just other moments on the farm, such as mortality events. I went out in the spring of 2022 with a crew of science people, and we had been trying something new, which was to double stack lantern nets to conserve space. And we went out, and we hadn't been on the farm for, I think, probably a month or so. It was through the winter when we don't go out as often. And we had found that all the scallops in the lower tier of nets were crushed. So we basically lost half of our scallops in one go, which was, I was planning to be my paycheck in 2023. At that point, there were no paychecks. So that was fairly devastating. But yeah, this is Paul on the right. He, yeah, filling pearl nets and just kind of trying new things constantly is yeah, what we have to do. So, what's going on here? There we go. So the next step was also trialing ear hanging equipment. So instead of the single drill doing one scallop at a time, we moved to kind of trying conveyor drill, and then other equipment such as this rail washer, which the scallops go in one side dirty and out the other side clean. And so Matthew. So just some improvements. And then also in this time, as we have more inventory, we're trying to figure out how to sell scallops and expand our distribution and sales reach. So yes, as I mentioned, we went to Japan in 2023, January 2023, with funding from Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center. And it was just a really amazing opportunity to meet the people that Dana and Hugh have been kind of working with over the years. And that's Bowden having some Japanese curry with Dr. Kosaka, who is the guy who literally wrote the book on Japanese scallop farming. And so he is the guy. And so we spent 3 or 4 days with him, and yeah, just truly wonderful to just have conversations and just get to know these people. Center photo is Mr. Tamura and his family. He's kind of like the head of his co-op, just a huge influence in the area for Amori scallop farming. And then this is Keita Jin. He's the owner and president of Jin Net, and so that's where we get our nets from. He's donning some Vertical Bay swag. So yeah. So this is just some photos, just to kind of give you a visual of what we were seeing. We're like, aha, this is pretty cool. They've got this is their waterfront, and so this is kind of within like a breakwater. And then this is one fishing co-op. So this traditionally, kind of before the collapse, these would all just be fishing boats that would go out every day and come back. And so, and each fisherman has kind of their own space. That's part of the co-op. On the other side is a huge, a huge kind of parking lot area, effectively, that's just full of nets and buoys and just gear storage, net cleaning. And so the photo on the right is inside one of the shacks, and this is Mr. Tamura's shack. They have a little oil drip stove, and this is where they go out to their farms, they pull their scallops, and they do their ear hanging in here, and they hold the scallops kind of out closer to the water in tanks, and then they have their, I think Mr. Tamura has 5 Tech 3s, so, and they're able to pin, I think over 100,000 scallops a day. So, and yeah, and it's just his family, and his family, they seed, if I remember correctly, like 7 or 8 million every year, and they ear hang 4 million every year. To give you some scale reference, we sold 30,000 last year. So yeah, munch on that. So it's kind of wild. So for Sam and I, it was like, okay, like maybe we won't be doing 4 million, but like there's hope to kind of reaching a scale that's sustainably or sustainable and kind of economically viable from a business perspective. 2024, just a really busy year. We doubled our production or doubled our sales. I had an amazing crew, and yeah, they were very good at reminding me to have fun. This was a really horrible day where we were pulling in tangled, sea-squirted dropper lines, and I'm stressing and pulling my hair out, and then I look back and this is what's happening behind me. So a lovely group of people to be working with. On the left is Sophia. She's a UNE senior right now. She's a local gal, just super excited about every day on the boat, and just that enthusiasm is what you need to keep going. So yeah, and then we're all working on gear, Bowden included. This is all spat collection gear. And then, yeah, another cool thing in 2024 was Hope in the Water, which was a PBS documentary, was released in July. And we were episode 2, and it's all about kind of folks doing kind of new and different things for a sustainable future in fisheries and aquaculture. And Martha Stewart was kind of the celebrity guest on that episode. And so she came out and spent a day on the water with us. And I went and did a cooking segment with her at her house in Seal Harbor. So, which was a hoot, needless to say. And Sam and Bowden got to meet her. Unfortunately, Sam couldn't cancel and join on the Monday session for the cooking. They wanted her there, but she didn't want to give her patients any grief. So, yeah. So today, it's 2025. We have a float, and we just built this last fall. I'm sure many of you have seen it, being from the Cumboni community. And our shack. Space on shore is limited, as you all know. I don't have millions of dollars to buy McCrum's property. And yeah, it's just tough to try to make it happen. So this, we're looking at alternative ways of creating workspace. And so this is, for docking our boat, for net storage, for ear hanging. And that's what we hope to use it for, kind of a base of operations. And then the photo on the right is our farm. And you'll probably are wondering what you're looking at. It's Camden Hills with a bunch of water in front of it. And there's some little specks out there, and those are our buoys. And on one long line of about, it's 5 buoys with maybe, we call them a bookmark to kind of mark our place of where we're working. We could have, depending on the stage of life, a market-sized scallop, you could have 100,000 scallops under the water there. And so, or, if they're smaller, more densely stocked, you could have 500,000 on a long line. So there's quite a lot going on under there, but just kind of shows kind of what it looks like visually. And yeah, okay, thank you. So a look kind of what we're working on now, just we're continually trying to improve our systems, just little projects like creating pearl net emptying racks, trying new things, trying to glean stuff from the Japanese, but then we also have a different system. We have tides, we've got different boats. We don't have on-land facilities and tractors and all sorts of 3-phase power and everything. So this is a net washer that we're hoping to employ once I can figure out the electrical for it. And then this video on the right is of us with our inaugural drilling session last week in the shack. So this is a Tech 3. We're going very slowly, but we hope to get to about 15,000 scallops a day. So which would be awesome. So Vertical Bay, that was us. Where do we fit in? Yeah, so how do we fit into Maine's kind of aquaculture industry, and kind of why are we doing this? What impact will it have? Scallop farming in Maine, as I kind of have been underscoring, is super, super small. It's teeny when compared to other aquaculture industries, and it's even smaller when compared to our wild fisheries, particularly lobsters. But it's the potential for growth is pretty incredible. So aquaculture in Maine can be split into 2 different segments. You have low trophic and fed farming systems. So you have seaweed and shellfish farming, and then you have finfish farming. This is a pretty important distinction to keep, as we all kind of are pretty aware of finfish farming locally and kind of on land, but then in water, they're two very, very different types of aquaculture and different, yeah, they have different requirements. And so shellfish and seaweed are effectively a passive growth. So the shellfish feed on the naturally occurring nutrients in the water. Seaweed just grow from the light and CO2, and they're just a plant in the water. It's pretty simple. You don't have to feed them. And so the goal with shellfish and seaweed is basically just keep them happy, keep them clean. You have to tend the gear, keep it floating. But otherwise, the shellfish are doing all the work. And they're, there's the cleaning the water. Yes, but it's all kind of a natural thing. They're eating, other larval scallops or other larval mussels. They're all kind of just eating whatever's floating out there. Whereas finfish, that requires inputs, whether it's feed or medicine, to support their fast growth or their kind of high stocking densities. So that's kind of Maine aquaculture split in two in a nutshell. And aquaculture in Maine just has a big impact, kind of an outsized impact on the state. And there's also, it just also adds to the branding of Maine seafood. And over the past 10 years, it's grown very substantially, and most of this growth is of smaller farms. So lots of LPAs with oysters in the estuaries, and the impact job-wise is tremendous too. Just roughly 1,500 full and part-time jobs. And yeah, for a tiny footprint, it's got a huge impact. And one fun fact, I know Sebastian Bell of Maine Aquaculture Association always says that all of Maine's aquaculture lease space and LPAs could fit within the Rockland Breakwater. So we think of it as this like massive thing. It's, when you zoom out of the Maine coast, it's actually quite small, and also economically compared to wild fisheries and the other fisheries, or wild fisheries, and I would say salmon farming, the two combined, it's a teeny tiny percentage of the economic output from Maine's fisheries as a whole. So what are we doing? What is Vertical Bay doing? We are kind of continually working to improve our own systems and operations and figure out our business, but we're also trying to help the industry grow as a whole. In partnership with UMaine, MAIC, Maine Aquaculture Innovation Center, Maine Sea Grant, to try to lower barriers to new entry growers or fishermen looking to diversify. And following the success of the seaweed industry, creating a how-to manual about 10 years ago, I believe, we have kind of we're undergoing an endeavor to create a how-to manual for scallop farming, and that's in collaboration with University of Maine, Maine Sea Grant, and the U.S. Small Business Administration. And kind of along with this how-to manual, which will provide kind of steps from start to finish, super detailed steps of how to splice things or how to stock spat bags, how to tie pearl nets together, all the knots, all the little details, similar to what kelp farming manual did. We'll also sourcing gear from Japan, both actual machinery, but then also nets and spat bags to literally give to new farmers, to just try to help more people get into it. There's quite a barrier of startup costs, so it's not just like, oh, I'm going to go dip a toe into scallop farming. Your longline system is $7,000 to $10,000. And then you got to get nets, but you can't just go to Hamilton Marine and get nets. You have to order a container of nets. So it's trying to provide access to all these pieces of the puzzle to make an efficient farm, or to make a farm efficient, so that people can kind of try it out without having to put their life savings into a boat and go for it. Yeah, so kind of in addition to the manual, we're already working directly with farmers, or with growers and fishermen, sharing. I do outreach. I speak at Aquaculture and Shared Waters, which is a Maine Sea Grant class for aquaculture curious people. And the manual is just, will help to add to that. And kind of with the growers and the industry people, we're constantly working on gear innovation. There's more and more studies, spat collection. Phoebe Jekyllek is doing a lot of work with her PhD on spat collection and distribution and larval studies up and down the coast. Lots of stuff still going on. And we're also looking to try to figure out new products. So farming scallops, we can harvest the whole animal and the meat. And then we can also, we don't have any limit on size. So we could harvest teeny tiny scallops for canning or for smoking, or we could harvest big whole scallops on the half shell and individually freeze them and vacuum seal them. There's like tons of different things that we can explore from a value add perspective. And kind of along those lines of kind of exploring marketing and kind of culinary opportunities, I went on a trip in April of 2024 with a group of Maine scallop enthusiasts. I was the only farmer. Hugh and Dana were on the trip. That's Rob Dumas, who's he's like a research chef essentially at University of Maine. Next to him is Togue Braun, who is Down East Dayboat Scallops. She's like the personality of Dayboat Scallops in Maine. And then they're flanked by two very highly regarded chefs in France. So this is kind of what we were doing. I got off the plane and an hour later we were sipping wine at 10 a.m. in this guy's kitchen. And he's like the Dr. Kosaka of sous vide. And the Bruno, he's like 80. And it was, just learning about scallops. Their industry in France, they only harvest the whole animal. And so that was the whole angle, was to try to figure out, how does the industry handle the whole animal? What do they do with it? How do they market it? How do they cook with it? And so all of these kind of continual learning processes, it's what we're working on. So looking kind of zooming out a little bit, and how does, trying to figure out how does scallop farming fit into the greater Maine coastal economy. You have to look at the wild fisheries. And this graph on the right is a little outdated. I think it ends in 2005, but it paints a pretty clear picture that we are very reliant on lobster. It's been called a monoculture with an uncertain future. Just with climate change, just lobsters move, things change environmentally speaking. And kind of looking back in history, fishermen also have historically had a diverse income. You lobster a little bit in the summer, you might ground fish in the winter, fish for some shrimp. You might dig clams there, you might do all sorts of stuff. And that would kind of help to diversify your income. And so you're not relying on just one thing. So just as the Seaweed Manual has helped, we hope, help lobstermen diversify, that's kind of the success story there. We want to kind of make an impact with our manual, with our outreach, to try to help fishermen to learn what scallop farming is and how to do it, and whether they're farming to farm or they're farming for wild enhancement, it really doesn't matter. Just something to give them options so they can diversify their efforts. Then on the left, we can kind of zoom in. This is scallop landings data in meat pounds, and it's 2024, so chronologically it doesn't line up totally with the other graph. And you can see 2005 is actually like super low year, so that's why on the graph on the right there's basically nothing of sea scallops. But currently, in 2024, Maine's fishery harvested just 500,000 pounds, which is a lot, but if you consider that's 1% of US landings, it's not a lot, really, in the grand scheme of the scallop appetite of America. And another piece of this that this graph shows is just general volatility of a wild fishery. You can see the spikiness of the graph on the right, but this just kind of zooms in to kind of illustrate the boom and bust nature of wild fisheries, in particular the scallop fishery. And hopefully farming can help to create some stability. So the big question we ask ourselves, again, I ask this almost every day of myself, why am I doing what I do? Why are we doing this? Why is Vertical Bay kind of endeavoring to grow scallops and figure it out? And why are we spending time to try to teach people how to do it? And a lot of outreach of, giving gear, on-boat support, on-farm support. My easy answer and kind of narrow immediate view is I want to grow a sustainable company that supports my family. We all need paychecks at the end of the day, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Just a way that I want to make a living and in an honest, kind of sustainable, environmentally friendly way. But also, I think to provide a social, cultural, and economic impact to our kind of greater community of Belfast and beyond. There's quite a looming problem that we're facing with climate change and resilience. And we're kind of facing it individually, but like it's up to all of us to try to work together to figure out. So just to kind of paint a picture of my dream, looking back at the wild harvest data, 2024, 500,000 pounds. What can scallop farming look like in Maine? If 20 farms farmed and harvested 500,000 scallops annually, that's roughly 25,000 pounds per year, Maine scallops landings would double. That's only 10 million scallops. So thinking back to Mr. Tamura and his farm, his family is doing 4 million a year. And he's one of hundreds of fishermen. So scallop fishing, they call it fishing over there. Scallop farming in Japan is kind of akin to our lobstering here. It's like everybody has a boat and their family helps, and it's kind of an individual-ish pursuit. That's just kind of to help illustrate the scale. And so ultimately, we see scallop farming as one of many tools for solving this question of long-term resilience for coastal Maine. And we hope to provide local, sustainable seafood for years to come, and we hope that we also have lasting positive effects on our greater community and coastal Maine as a whole. So thank you. I'm going to give more thank yous. I want to thank my wife for being supportive and patient. I also want to thank Wayne Canning, who's not here, who's been very helpful. David Black, without you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm emotional. Also, Kathy, thank you very much. I saw you here earlier. I can't see anything now. She left. Yeah, she's been wonderfully supportive. Yeah, and friends and family. Thanks to everybody for this.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, yes. Anyone who got?
So, like probably some other people in this room, I sail out on the bay, down around where your lease is, and I'm just wondering, how far down are these things, and do we worry about, how do we avoid getting hung up in your gear? How far down is it? If you see a bunch, what does it look like when you're out on the water, and how do you know to avoid it?
It's marked by a bunch of yellow buoys. The long line itself is actually sunk 15 feet below the surface of the water, so as not to, it's not really the intention, but it's a nice byproduct of sinking it. It's to get them down out of the sun. But yeah, at low water, you're 15 feet kind of over the farm. So at high water, it just stays the same. So at high water, it would be 25 feet down. I would say, I mean, any thing where you see just tons of buoys, just avoid it. Yeah, you can go right over it. Yeah, so it's yeah, you can go right over it. You can go between the buoys. Yeah, just like with lobster buoys, I wouldn't go close to it, just because anything can happen.
And how big is that area?
The lease from one end, right now there's 5 800-foot long lines, and the anchors go down 200 feet on either side, and then right now there's a huge gap. We have in for a 40-acre lease, which that was put in 2 or 3 years ago, I think. In the time from when we put it in to now, we've kind of changed our thinking on how we want to actually orient the lines and take up less space, because that's just a big chunk of area. But if we can kind of arrange the lines in more of like a, not vertical, but like linear fashion, and then space them like way farther apart, you just kind of create less kind of gear conflicts. It's a little easier for people to navigate around. Where we are specifically, like people generally either go south of us or they're kind of like going into Pond Island, and it's like a center console boat. So it's not really in the flow of traffic as far as we've seen. Yeah, in 6 years. So that's, yeah, the sighting is like a really challenging part of this whole process. So.
Question, are you suspended between the sea floor and the top, so you're kind of in this totally suspended?
Yeah, we're in the middle of the water column. Yeah.
And the people on Zoom can't hear the
So, how tolerant are scallops of warming water? What's their good zone, I guess I'd say, temperature wise?
Anything over 70 degrees Fahrenheit is the death zone.
Yep.
And they really don't grow very well, even kind of above 60 degrees. Like basically 15 degrees Celsius, 10 to 15 is kind of where you want to be. So yeah, that's definitely something that we think about. But we also, I mean, down the bay specifically, that's partly why we chose that area, is just because it's kind of full, you know, everything except for the top like 4 feet is true ocean water. And there's just a lot of good flush down there as well. Up here, particularly in Belfast Bay, we all know the water temperature is like, it was like a bathtub last year. The bottom is good water, but you don't really have the full water column all the way up in the bay.
Do scallops have any natural predators the way you're raising them?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, our goal is to keep them up off the bottom,
Right.
and particularly the dropper lines. They're pretty exposed, so if they're down, crabs and starfish are the predators. So, yeah, but we don't have duck problems like mussels. Mussel farmers are forced to kind of grow in rafts so they can put nets around them. Whereas elsewhere in the world, it's way more efficient to grow mussels on long line systems, like in New Zealand. But we can't do that here. Well, I think we can, but when they were trialing it kind of way back in the beginning, like a family of eider ducks came in and cleaned off a farm in like 24 hours. And they were like, enough of that. But we haven't had any issues with that. Or seals. We've got a huge kind of seal colony right on the black ledges right next to us. And they come and say hello. We've had seals come and kind of pat the boat, and yeah, but they haven't seemed to disrupt the scallops at all.
Andrew, I have a question. About salmon. Farmed salmon is, as you were kind of suggesting, fed, and there's antibiotics and other stuff to try to get them fat and juicy to market. How does that affect what is essentially a wild growing scallop farm?
It could if it was right next to it, I would imagine. I guess it would all be a matter of proximity. We don't have salmon farms at all close to here, thankfully. I don't really know specifically, you know, what the tolerances are of, you know, dilution and stuff. If there are traceable amounts of, you know, there's probably worse stuff going in the water closer to home. So,
if
yeah.
scallop farming did take off the way you're envisioning, there might someday be some regulatory discussions about what do we want growing in the water?
Right. Yeah. And with any filter feeding animal, you know, you're filtering what's in the water. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. That was really a great talk. I don't know anything about scallop farming, and I wondered what that shack was doing out there. I didn't think it was a sauna. Anyway,
I've had many requests.
I have two questions. One's quick and the other one's a little more economically led. I see you take the scallops out of the water when you're putting the spikes in and things. How long can they be out of the water?
Scallops are divas. They really can't be out of the water for too long. It's all about kind of temperature gradients, I guess, or temperature differential. Like it's more about shocking them. So in the summer, I can take them out when the water is 65 degrees, and if it's 65 degrees and shaded, they're fine. But if it's in the sun, they'll die. When the water was 70 degrees, I was handling and prepping scallops last summer, and I was losing half of the scallops I was handling in a given day. So I would have to prep double to meet my harvest goal for the next day, because they were dying. And then we stopped doing that because that was not. And then that was for our whole animal. But yeah, this time of year, it's kind of like a refrigerator. So as long as there's not sun and wind on them, they're a little more tolerant. But yeah, we try to keep them in water as much or out of water as little as possible.
So are you talking about like 10 minutes or an
Oh,
hour or
No, like a minute.
minute?
Yeah, 2 minutes, 3 minutes maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's like Japanese have done a lot of science on this, and yeah, it's pretty amazing, their sensitivity to being out of water. So not like oysters. So that's oysters. Yeah, it's I'm not going to say it's easier to farm oysters, but they're way hardier. They're easier to handle, and so that when managing biofouling, oyster farmers can just flip their cages upside down, so they're out of the water, and they can let them sit there for a day and dry off, and then put them back in the water, and that's how they clean. But whereas we have to empty the nets, redistribute the scallops, and then clean the nets, and put the scallops back in the water. Or for the dropper lines, that's the nice thing, is there's a lot of labor up front to get them on the droppers, but then that the rail washer, it makes it pretty easy to just kind of cruise a line, and it's slow, but it's steady and pretty efficient. And you're cleaning like that probably 3 or 4 times between pinning and harvest.
Thank you. One last question. I'm wondering about what drives the economics of what you can sell them for. Is it the prices in Japan? Is it the cost of doing business on your leased water in Maine, just you and your operation? And how much does it fluctuate?
We haven't changed our price since we started selling. We have changed kind of what we're selling. For a while, we're just selling whole animals, but now we're actually going into this harvest year. We're only going to be selling shucked product. But the price really, yeah, we, with the help of Struan, really, and a SCORE mentor, Bill Webster, kind of doing some financial modeling, trying to understand what it costs us and not to put ourselves out of business before we even get started. So we're definitely like, yeah, we're kind of trying to set a price. We're at $40 a pound retail, and so that's it's higher than $28 a pound at Hannaford, but we're also differentiating between a previously frozen scallop by we harvest our scallops the morning we give them to you, or the morning we put them in a box to ship them. So you're getting your scallop kind of within 24 hours almost of it being harvested. And yeah, we're kind of out of sync intentionally with, somewhat intentionally, with the wild fisheries. So the wild fishery in Maine is, I think it's December through March, and we sell primarily in the summer, mainly for operational reasons and for biology. Scallops, as they lead into spawning. They're packing on fats and sugars. They're storing energy in their adductor muscle. And so harvesting in July and August, right before they spawn, is actually the optimal time because they have a really plump meat. It's also just an incredible quality, a different texture, and the flavor is way different than if we were to harvest our own scallops in January. It would taste kind of like a wild harvested scallop in January, versus harvesting our scallop, waiting until May, June, July, August. It's like a totally different animal. Yeah.
So do you have any interaction with the people out on Hurricane Island doing the research out there?
Yes. Yeah, we I mentioned Phoebe earlier, and she's kind of continually doing research. She's not out there anymore. She's working on her doctorate. So we'll see what our continued working together looks like in the future. But yeah, we
Because there's a whole bunch of us here from BBWC. They took us out to Hurricane Island with the Penn Bay Stewards Program, and we were asked to count the tiny babies and then measure the tiny babies, and it was so tedious. So and so what do you do with all the shells?
Right now, we are plucking each individual plastic pin from the shells with pliers, and we are writing a grant to try to develop a piece of equipment that does that. And then the shells, I should have included a photo. If you drive on White Street, all of the shells from last year's harvest, from all of our shucking, are in Peter Millard and his wife Em. It's her initiative. And they're the driveway. So
How
yeah,
fabulous.
a crushed shell driveway. So
Great.
I was curious about collecting larvae. Do they hang? You said you went out to re-ask the question.
the spat collection.
Yeah, how do you,
How do I collect
do you
spat?
dry-
No, so the spat collectors, they're basically, if you picture a buoy line, like a lobster trap on the seafloor and then a buoy on the top. Along that buoy line, we add a little extra float, but we attach the bags along that line, so they're kind of, and we position them lower in the water column, because as the scallops are settling out, they want to settle on something lower down, like the bottom, but instead they're flowing in, and then they're attaching to that netting on the inside. So, and then we leave those, so they go out end of September. September 20th is like Marsden's date. He's been doing spat collection since early 2000s. And then they're out there pretty much all winter, and you can move them kind of to a more sheltered area. We can move our bags to a farm. We have it rigged so we can kind of break up the line and bring it to our farm. And we'll do that anytime, pretty much January through March. So.
Well, I think we're pretty much out of time. So thank you. This has been
Yeah.
so interesting.
Thank you.
And we now know what goes on in that little house. We now know what goes on in that little hut.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, feel free to stop by.
Thank you.
I also, for those interested, I don't do special tours or anything, but if you're game for a unabbreviated day, a full day, I take folks out. So, it's quite a long day. It's an early day, but feel free to contact me. I will make kind of no.
Oh, I know someone
yeah.
who'd really like to do
But
that.
yeah, you can come out, and you don't have to work, but you'll be stuck on a boat. So, so yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank
so
you. Yeah,
much.
thank you, everybody.